Good day to everyone joining this monthly broadcast. And if you're watching the recording, it could be any time of the day or night. So for those joining us live right now, you're very, very welcome once again. I'll just a quick hello to John Corey, the co-host. How are you, John?
I'm good. All ready for today.
Excellent, excellent. This is our topic today is right up your street, which we'll come on to. And great to have Brenda joining us from the project coordinator of LEOcrowdfunding. How are you, Brenda?
I'm fine. Wonderful morning. My health is excellent. The roads are very good and the weather's not too bad. So there you go.
Very good, very good. We better let the attendees into the context. So as we were waiting to go press record and go live, I was asking John or commenting how, particularly in Northern Ireland, my part of the world, the topic of conversation tends to be the weather. And Brenda, you had a bit of history lesson for us.
Yes, it's a fallout from polite society back in the 1800s, where you really only could talk about the weather, the state of the roads, and your health. So there you go.
There we are. So that's from now on, John. That's our polite conversation before we go live.
Well, I'll understand better my mother-in-law's obsession in watching the weather reports because she wants to just have something to say in polite society.
Exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. What a great start to our monthly broadcast. Thank you. But a history lesson. Thank you, Brenda. So listen, thanks everyone for joining us. Delighted you could share this time with us. We're going to get straight into what is I think going to be a very valuable session today. So first of all, my name is David Johnson. I am the CEO of LEOcrowdfunding. We're an equity property crowdfunding platform. And I'll let my co-host introduce himself.
John Corey, Property Fortress. I focus on being a long-term landlord. If we get to November safely, I will have achieved 40 years as a real estate investor, which is sort of freaky in the sense is like, really? But yeah, it's buy and hold US UK. And I also, because of my technology background, like getting into arcane topics like the FCA regulations.
But 40 years, you hardly like a day over 40, John. You must have invested young, did you?
Not that young, but you know, by some standards, yes. But quite a few people started before I did.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. And good. That's what it is. Is that it's the makeup department you talk about when you're getting ready for your broadcast?
Hey, you know, it's 2 hours before this broadcast to get down to makeup.
And
I had 2 minutes.
Yeah, you're a fastball. So Brenda, do you want to quickly introduce yourself just to the audience, please?
Yep. I am the project coordinator for LEOcrowdfunding, which mainly involves dealing with fundraisers from sending through of the project right through to getting it on the platform. But I also do compliance and have a little bit of a hand in the investment side as well. So broad brush.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So today the agenda is a property market update. We're going to be talking about some platform news. Special topic is very much around the FCA and their latest policy statement. A bit of words of wisdom from Corey's Corner, and then confirmation how you can get in touch as required. So initially we're going to kick off with a quick look at what's happening in the UK housing market. The video that I wanted to play was actually embedded in one of the national papers, so it was impossible to bring it into the presentation. So a wee bit of sort of IT magic should let me play this, and we will go from there. If you just give me a second. You'll keep me right, Brenda, if you can see it okay. I just need to pause it first, then I'll share screen. Okay, you should be seeing the screen now, I hope, and I will press play. Escape. Someone's got a free advert.
Now and discuss.
Okay, a quick.
So David, why do you find that interesting?
I find it interesting. Just first of all, I like the high level of the stats. So rather than wading through reading loads of things, I think it's a very quick look at really where the areas that are in focus. So I think that's always useful. And I think for me personally, pictures is better than wading through text. What's
Okay.
behind your question?
Well, it's funny the way you answered. I didn't expect the bit that you're basically a very light reader and like pictures rather than words. But what I was thinking is that you're seeing it as an indication of something. So what does it indicate to you?
Well, it's really just a snapshot of kind of where the market is in terms of, like, for instance, I did obviously read the rest of the article as well. Just where is been impacted most by the current situation. Where does London? Most people like to take London as a temperature of what's happening in the overall market as well.
Okay, so you see it
really
as a forward indicator or temperature that is indicative of something wider. And there historically has been this conversation about the ripple effect. What happens in London eventually makes its way out to the regions or whatever, and places like Belfast get it last, and maybe Cornwall. So by the time it reaches there, the wave effect is quite dampened.
Yeah. So you've got your three main things at the minute, runaway inflation, the cost of living squeeze, the rising mortgage costs sort of feeding into what's happening. I was interested that, for instance, that Scotland is the least impacted, according to this report. I'm not sure what the reasons are for that. East Anglia being the most impacted. So again, there's obviously individual location factors in those areas, but I just find it interesting that it changes rapidly given circumstances. But it's a snapshot.
Not as much though a flattening out of the curve in some ways after the unusual bounce after COVID, where people were moving around all over the place, and prices were crazy in different areas, and then all of a sudden it's like stopped. But that's because people went, okay, we don't need to move. I don't know, but it is just.
I think Brenda's onto something, that it's in the context of much of other things. One of the things was discussed last night with my wife is that 10% of the UK is suffering from the cladding crisis. Well, that's almost always flats, and it's almost always centered in London. So if you have a disproportionate hit where flats can't be sold in London because of cladding, or a large number can't be, then does that dampen prices? So only cash buyers can buy them.
The article also indicates, which I think is sort of an important factor that will probably impact over the next wee while, is that there's going to be probably a labor market that's going to be hit a little bit, which obviously is going to maybe weaken and cause some impact on developers' ability to deliver. And you've also got a likely fall in real earnings, which again takes time to impact the market, but they're all factors that I think will feed in over the next probably 6 to 9 months, which aren't reflected right now in the snapshot. So that's, I just like the snapshot. So any other observations, John, or just in terms of
well, in the 40-year reference, me in 40 years, this is nothing. Like, whatever, move on. This is like there's a raindrop that landed. So what? Yeah.
I mean, my summary is really, given the factors that we have in the current property market, we are exactly where you'd expect to be. A little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of wait and see, a little bit of just watching what's happening, but exactly what you'd expect to see given the circumstances we have. So that's
and uncertainty is a signal to the professionals. It's time to think about buying, because when things are certain, that's when you should be selling.
Yeah, but that's a good point. Good point. So that's just a brief market update. No major change to where we have been, but they're the factors that are likely to impact. Okay, so quick update on the platform and some things that are happening. So Brenda, I know you were heavily involved with Susie on this. We actually successfully funded the raise 2 of the old woolen mill. Was it 24 hours, Brenda?
Just around 24 hours, maybe just slightly over it.
Okay, so with 21 investors invest as a total of 42,000, and that lets Susie finish off her planning application in terms of some of the reports it required. And I think she's expecting hopefully positive news in the next few weeks from what I understand.
Yep.
So have you any comments, John?
You're
on this?
forecasting news. This is not good. Compliance is going to be talking to you soon.
I think there were the caveat, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Just
possibly, and projected are the three great words of,
yeah, estimated. Those are all my favorite words. Yeah.
Yeah, it might rain too.
Well, we are in Northern Ireland, so the chances of that are actually quite high. So
let's move on to the roads.
Extremely high. So that's great to get another successful raise as our first one of 2023. Obviously, we've got a number on the platform, but it was great to get another one done. And
yeah, for those listening, if you're looking to raise money, there were some things that came out during that raise that this was the second raise for the same project, and it's sort of like you could do raises in phases, and there was some learnings or some experiences that came up which were quite helpful about how do you do a first raise, how do you do a second raise, how do you do a third raise. So you can take an individual site, and because the projects at most of the time have different phases, you might want to build a certain part of it rather than the whole site at once. You might have to do planning before you do construction, whatever it is that causes the phasing. This was an interesting project because it got in a little bit to the, what does it mean to have phases? What does it mean to have new shareholders coming in when they're existing shareholders? So there's a lot of interesting side effects that you can learn for it. And anybody that wants to can go read at least some of the information. Even if you're not a shareholder, some of it will still be visible to the public.
Yeah. Okay, and on that one, Brenda, the shareholder agreement, what stage is that at for the investors?
It's at acceptance stage at the minute, so we are waiting on those pledged investors to accept the shareholders agreement, which will make them shareholders in the project. So we also have a wait list for that one, which is something to bear in mind. So if people, are keen to be involved in the project, if anyone drops out, so.
Okay, that's a really good point, actually. So we are waiting. If you happen to be on today and you have made your investment into Old Willow Mill Race 2 and haven't accepted the shareholder agreement, you need to do that. You need to review it and make sure you're happy with it. And if you're happy with it, then obviously accept it so we can move to drawdown. Otherwise, time will elapse and some of the wait list people will come in and take up any slack. So thank you for that, Brenda. The next project that's currently live on the platform is the Central Point in Liverpool. It's an opportunity to invest in development of 69 new apartments just near Liverpool city centre by Integritas Group. On the screen there is a QR code and also a link to a project webinar that is happening today at 1 o'clock. So immediately after this short break, short turnaround, and then Brenda and I will be on the webinar with some of the guys from Integritas. And I believe there actually maybe will have someone on site who'll be able to show what's happening right now, real time on the site in Liverpool. So if this interests you, you can go to the thumbnail, have a look at it, and you can actually tune in at 1 o'clock and join our webinar. Then we also have Thurlaston House in St. Ives. We did a really good project webinar last night, the second in a series of 3 that really get into some of the details around the project. I know, John, you've been involved in this with Mark. I think last night was an interesting, some of the questions that came in from the attendees really was a deep dive into how this is structured.
Well, one of the things we're trying to do, and I am guiding Mark, it's his project, his company's project, and I'm just the guide. But we're trying to make it easier for people to learn from the project and to experience service accommodation or how to raise money or whatever it is that they want to learn by following along. And last night in particular, in the episode or the webinar coming up in about a week's time, we're really focused on what people are asking. So questions they're posting in the forum or somehow communicating to us into the platform, that we take those questions, we do a bit of a deep dive into each of those questions, see if they're follow-on questions, And we also are doing this with the point of view that it's less about the live event, more about watching the recordings, so people can spend as much time as they want trying to go through the information, understanding the information. If they want to do a raise for themselves in the future, you might want to take this list of questions and think about it, because it might come up in their raise when they do one, things like that.
Mhm. Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. So that's another project that's there at the minute. You can go on the thumbnail. You can go to our YouTube channel. You can see there, YouTube/LEOcrowdfunding. You'll see the first broadcast. Now the second, the first webinar. Now the second project webinar, and there's another one to come next week. So have a good look at that one. It's an income product. Mark and the team, very, very experienced in that area. So that is that. Okay. And then we also have Stafford Gardens is live on the platform, and I believe there'll be an update probably by Monday, Tuesday next week on this one. It's a planning application, and again, experienced team around the principal, Mark Afifa, who is actually a barrister, and this is a project that is covering the cost of the planning application, and again provides an opportunity to invest in this type of a project if that's what you're interested in. I think what I like, John, at the minute is we've got development projects, we've got planning projects, we've got income projects. It's a nice mix in terms of diversification on the platform currently.
There is, and that's one of the advantages for a passive investor. And speaking now as a passive investor, I do like that I can look at different projects. I'm not the one doing all the hunting. And if I like the project, I like it. And if I don't like it, I don't like it. But there's different strategies in different locations too. So I can somewhat spread my risk location. Like we featured London a minute ago, maybe being a little soft. Well, what's Cornwall doing, or what's Scotland doing, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all very relevant. So Brenda, any questions dropped in the Q&A relevant to the projects?
We do have one that is actually quite an interesting concept. They're asking basically what due diligence LEOcrowdfunding does on each project, and it is quite extensive, but they've also said, could a checklist be included with the projects to see what checks have been carried out? Not really something we've thought about before, I suppose, but something maybe interesting to consider. Yeah,
that's a very interesting one. Just regarding the question about the due diligence, as a project coordinator, you're kind of the point person for the company dealing with developers. So when we say due diligence, what does that entail, and who's taking responsibility for the due diligence ultimately in terms of the investment?
Well, as I say, we have quite an extensive list. We four main areas. We basically look at the financials. We would look at the director's DD, we would look at the project DD, and then we also look at the company or the SPV DD. So those are the four main areas that we cover, and within each of those we have separate checklists that we need to go through. Say if for the property, for example, if they say to us, oh, we have an option on this site, well, we have to see that option. We can't just say, oh, that's fine, you have an option on that site. Or if they say, oh, we have development finance for this, we also have to say, look, can you show us your development finance? We do quite an extensive overview of the financials. We'll look at what they provide us, and we'll do our own stress test on that. So those are a couple of the different areas that we cover.
Yes, John?
So I have a question on that, Brenda, because I think there might be some confusion. The FCA requires that the offers are fair, transparent, something a person in the street would be able to at least read or understand. So to a large degree, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that the platform's DD is focused on that. It's not focused on whether it's a good deal or a bad deal or a suitable deal for an individual investor. So the DD that the platform does is almost not relevant for what the individual needs to do when it comes to making their investment decision.
We're not going to give them an investment advice per se. We're not going to say, oh, we have looked at this and this is an amazing deal. That wouldn't be fair to the investors, because it may not be amazing for them. It may not suit their risk profile. It may not suit how much they can afford to invest. It's really up to the individual to look at the facts that are given, see maybe the length of time a project's going to run, see how it fits in with their investment strategy, and take it from there. But we do as they say, extensive DD on the project, on the developer, on the financials and that in the background. So we're looking at the project from, as you say, an FCA point of view to make sure that what people are saying to us is accurate.
Yeah. I think the way I would summarize it is it's standardizing the information that's presented on the platform. So it must reach a certain level of, as Brenda says, checklists. So we have confirmed that the information presented has been checked out and is accurate to the best of our knowledge and to the best of our DD. What investors do with the information in terms of an investment decision is a separate thing, but at least they know if it's on our platform that we've, if you like, gone through a checklist. We've done stress tests. We've confirmed the information provided has been backed up with material statements, and which is very important, has been signed off as a financial promotion by our FCA principal. So that, if you like, comfort level in terms of at least the information has been validated, but that's obviously different than saying whether or not it's a good investment or not.
Yeah, and there's always risk at the end of the day. With all projects, there's risk, and that's why you're encouraged to read risk warnings.
Perfect. That leads us in beautifully to what our topic is for today, and we're going to
actually before you go into that, David.
Okay.
There's a question in the Q&A. Someone would like the link for the later webinar. If Brenda could copy that link and drop it into the comments, so that everybody can see it. So anybody that wants to go to that webinar, you're welcome to go to that webinar. It's a completely different project than the planning one, Thurleston House. So it's a great opportunity to see how a major developer is running a bigger project.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. So let's get into today. And this is really important, particularly for any of the new people to the platform. I can actually see from the attendee list, there are a number of people who are relatively new to our platform. So this would be maybe your first time actually hearing this discussed in detail. So in August, just last year, policy statement 2210 from the FCA around strengthening our financial promotion rules for high risk investments and firms approving financial promotions. So obviously exactly what we're involved in as an equity property crowdfunding platform. We did highlight, and I don't want John spend too much time on these again, but the three main areas or summary, if you like, or the biggest takeaways, that the creation of a 24-hour cooling off period before someone can invest after registration. There was investor categorization, sort of a raising of the bar on that, which we're going to be discussing in detail in a minute. And then this personalized risk warning, which again is very new. So they're the three main takeaways. Any sort of high-level comments before we go through the process?
Well, the first one the FCA refers to as positive friction. They're intentionally slowing down people so you don't get carried away emotionally. And if you're new to the platform, they want you to have to go through a 24-hour delay or a timeout or whatever. And the personalized risk warning, again, is to sort of hammer home this. We're talking to you, and we're going to put your name in the risk warning. We're going to put your name in the notice of the pop-up that you have to pay attention to the risk warnings. And all of this is so that people are more prudent in their decision making, more thoughtful in their decision making, and they don't feel pressurized or wanting to rush.
Okay, that's a good summary. Thank you for that. So what we thought would be useful is we're going to run through the registration process, and we'll automatically then bump into some of the new parts of the process that the FCA have insisted on. So when someone comes to the platform, and if anyone does have questions, stick it in the Q&A, and if time allows, we'll try and answer any questions, or we can get back separately to answer these questions. So the initial part of the registration is just the capture of initial data. What is important is that someone who lives in America or Canada cannot register for the service we effectively offer.
It doesn't say that. It's actually if you live in Britain, but you're holder of a U.S. passport is the implications. It's not just country of residence.
Yes, that's a good clarification. Thank you. So it's that's important to highlight right at the start. Now, if someone is in the UK, for instance, and they happen to have a UK limited company, then they can register as a company. which will come on to in a minute. So there are, well, the way around is not the term to use. There are other avenues open to someone who happens to be a resident of America or Canada, if that is applicable to them. So obviously you're encouraged to read the terms and conditions as you'd expect. And then when you've done that, you'll receive a verify your email request. Then you'll get a chance to actually confirm your email. And then you'll receive a registration complete. This is the initial registration, step one, registering on the platform. So yes, Brenda, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, just you probably skipped over the marketing tick box. So you're asked here, yes, will you opt in to marketing basically? And then some people don't realize that we don't communicate to anyone who says they don't opt in for marketing. So they don't find out about new deals. They don't find out about what's happening they don't find out about the broadcast. So we would encourage you to tick the marketing box, because you will not be bombarded with emails by any stretch of the imagination, but it does keep you up to date with what's happening to do with raises. So just to point that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some friends who have missed out on deals they would like to have invested in because they never received a notice. And when I've spoken to them, they didn't tick the box to be told about deals, which is that box.
Yeah. And we do a weekly. Go ahead, Brenda.
Yeah, I think people just assume we're going to send them out emails every single day. I think that's the marketing concept that people have in their head. So it's really not. It's more about telling you about deals. So
yeah, and you tend to do a weekly platform update that goes out, and that tends to contain most of the information that we communicate. It's usually a weekly basis, and there might be one or two more a week at the very, very most, specifically about projects. But I mean, it's usually no more than 2 a week that would go to that database that I've ticked. Is that a fair comment?
That would be correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So as you say, no one's getting bombarded. So that's step one process. Now you're effectively have an account with Leo Crowdfunding, and this is where you need to start to be aware of where the FCA new policies are coming into play. So once you've logged back into your to the homepage, you'll see now at the top right, it'll be an account option. So when you click down the account, you'll be invited very clearly to complete your profile. So you cannot make an investment on a platform like this unless you've completed your profile. So what does that mean? Step one is this thing called an investor appropriateness test. Now, this is really, really important from a compliance point of view, because this is where you are confirming that you understand the nature of this type of investing and understand the risk of this type of investing, which Brenda mentioned earlier. So we do encourage people to, before you take the test, you should go and have a look at the risk section, read through it, and you'll find if you do that, then you'll be much, much better prepared to answer the questions. Now, obviously, just from John and Brenda's point of view, not that you would have anyway, but just obviously we will not be given the answers to the 2 examples I've given there. These are live questions currently on the appropriateness test. They do sort of change every so often. So we're not going to say what the answers are, but it was just to give people an idea of the type of questions. So I'll let you, Brenda, comment in a minute, but the first one there is investments available on this platform are loans to a company that are guaranteed to be returned with interest, shares in a company, special purpose vehicle that owns property as its assets or is an early stage company, or C, a way to receive guaranteed regular interest payments like a bank savings account. So only one of those answers is correct. 2 of them are demonstrably false, and you need to select the one that is appropriate for this platform. And the other question, again, is around risk. So your 3 choices are: investing carries a risk of losing some or all of the money that you put in. No, there will be no risk of losing money when investing with Leo Crowdfunding, or no, I will be able to claim to the financial services compensation scheme if I lose money when investing with Leo Crowdfunding. Again, 2 are demonstrably false, 1 is correct. You need to select the right one, and there's 7 questions like that. So Brenda, how often can people do the test, and what happens if they fail it?
Okay, well, you probably have about 2 opportunities to complete the test. once you've failed it, for the second time, then there would be a period of time where you would have to wait before you could resit the test. Test is maybe a bad word for it, because it does denote passing and failing, but it's more maybe about learning. I think more than anything, it's learning and understanding the risks that are involved in investing on our type of platform. So the best thing to do is, as you say, read the risk summary, read the risk information, read the FAQs, because all the information about investing on our platform is there, and that's what these questions are based on. So that's the best place to start before you proceed to take the app test.
Any comments, John, or observations?
Well, what I've found with people is if they just take the time to read the whole question and then read every answer before they pick, they generally do better, because think about what you're reading and make an informed decision. But I do like the fact that you can go to the risk warning page and study, in a sense, like, how do you invest and what's going on? What does this all mean? That it's a more informed person before they take quiz, test, whatever this is.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I like the whole concept of equity property crowdfunding, one of the reasons I went into starting a platform like this, is that, there's no gray area. If someone cannot answer these questions accurately, they should not be investing through the platform. And that may well not land well with someone who wants to invest, but that's what compliance and regulation are about. Someone needs to demonstrate they understand risk, need to demonstrate they understand they're getting into an investment scenario. An investment, by their very nature, investments can go up or down. And in some ways, John, is actually, I think, protecting the platform or time saving in the future. Because if you have a whole bunch of people who don't really know what they've done, and then a data starts to go a little bit wrong, which happens on every single platform through circumstances and all the rest of it, those that don't understand are the ones that tend to sort of shout the loudest. But can I lose my money? What do you mean I can lose my money? And it's like, well, you had to pass the test that confirmed you understood that at the start. So if you're going to be worried about that in a year's time, or you need the money really urgently for something, then do not invest in the first place. That's the criteria.
Yeah. I think you're right, David, that it's about getting people to be really honest and blunt with themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we move into investor type. Now, you can invest as an individual, and we're going to discuss that quickly. But do be aware you can invest as an organization, an institution, and as a trust. So for today, we're not going to deep dive into those options. There are obviously a different sort of pathway to there, but just be aware you can do that. But in terms of an individual, you can be either a restricted investor, a high net worth investor, or a self-certified sophisticated investor. So they are the three categories. The advantage of crowdfunding is it allows particularly marketing to the retail audience. And traditionally, people weren't able to access a lot of investment opportunities that were out there. They were kind of kept for high net worth people and for institutions. So I love property crowdfunding through platforms because it democratizes the whole concept of investing. So for restricted investor, the key thing there is you cannot invest any more than 10% of your net assets into projects. You've got to confirm that you understand that, and that over the next 12 months, you won't do any more than 10% of your net assets. Pension income does not count when it comes to that formula. So that's the first step, retail, and most tend to be retail clients. Any comments on that, Brenda, before we move on?
No, it's quite straightforward, yeah. But just to clarify, if you are investing as a company, you do have to choose here, because this is the step that takes you down the company route. So just to be clear on that, because some people miss it and then we have to backtrack a bit on it. But
yeah, good point. Okay, so the next step then is a sophisticated investor. Now, again, this is important because there are a number of routes to that, if you like, or qualifying criteria. First of all, if you work in private equity or most types of finance that provide finance to businesses, then you qualify. If you're the director of a company that does over 1 million turnover, then again, you automatically qualify. If you're a member of a business angels group for over 6 months, again, you qualify. The key one's probably that if you've done 2 investments in the last 2 years into unlisted investment opportunities, which is actually investing on crowdfunding platforms. So any retail investors who have done 2 investments into deals in the platform, even if it's as low as £100, you actually now qualify as a sophisticated investor. So that's important to note. Now, what is really interesting is at the end of this process, and John, this is where this new FCA stuff comes in. If someone comes to the end of that and they cannot confirm any of the options I've listed, there's then another option which says here, this does not apply to me. So you're saying that none of the above questions apply to you. Well, if you confirm that, it kicks you out of the sophisticated investor back to the retail option, because you're effectively saying, if I cannot tick any of the above, then I am not a sophisticated investor. There's no fudging this and just saying, yeah, I'm self-certifying, I am. You've got to indicate which of the above you qualify for, which obviously can be independently verified. So that's an interesting.
It's a safety net or a check that, you need to tell us how you qualify, and we might ask you to show us evidence of that. So
yes, correct. And then the high net worth individuals then, and again, I'm sure some attendees are quite familiar with this, but you need an annual income over £100,000. Again, your pension payments do not qualify for that. Your net assets can be $250,000, 250,000. Your personal residence does not count for that. Your pension pots do not count for that. So your net assets, excluding those things, at $250,000 means you can qualify as a high net worth individual. And again, if you don't confirm which of the above you qualify for, you'll be literally taken back to the retail option. So there are, again, there's additional comment there to the high net worths, that being a high net worth will expose you to promotions to investments that are significant, significant risk of losing money. There are some projects that the fundraisers may choose to only market to high net worths. So it may be they're raising a large sum of money and they only want investors that may be starting off at 10, 20, 50K as a minimum investment, which clearly would rule out almost all retail investors. So that is just an extra warning as a high net worth of what you'll be been open to by being on the platform. So any comments on that, Brenda?
No, I'm just thinking sort of later down the line, where if you have invested as a high net worth or sophisticated, then you will be asked possibly for source of funds later on. So all of this feeds into it. So something to remember when you're actioning this.
That's a very good point. And the threshold is 50,000. So once cumulative investment on the platform gets to 50,000, or you try and make an investment of 50,000, then there's an additional source of funds requirement for ML purposes, anti-money laundering purposes. So that's a really good point, Brenda. Thank you for that. Okay, so then you move on to your personal details. Pretty straightforward. But Brenda's pet hate is the image upload. So I'll let you make your comments, Brenda, on that.
Yeah, well, most people are very good, but occasionally we have little boxes along the bottom, as you can probably see, and it gives you an indication of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Basically, an image has to be clear, easy to read, well lit, not cut in half. So say for your passport, it has to be both pages and it has to be clear and within the frame. For the driving license, again, a lot of people tend to take a picture with a flash, so you end up with this overexposed image, and that then leads to problems with it, because it is an automated system that checks the KYC. So if the automated system can't read it, then it kicks it back out. So if you haven't uploaded a good quality image, then the system will kick it back out, and that's why you'll get notifications to say your KYC has not been approved. But it just take a few minutes and just get it right. And it only takes a few minutes, and then it saves you the hassle of having to go back in and upload a different image.
So I know of another situation, which is where people are sloppy with the way they are addressed. They're Baron such and such, such and such, such and such under the law. That's their birth certificate and legal name on their documents, but they use Sam as their name. And then the two don't match. So you need to be very particular, folks, about the ID has to exactly match the name you're showing on the system.
Yeah. As someone said, it's like signing up for a bank. You have to use the exact name that's going to be on your ID, which you're going to prove your identity with. So as you say, if the two don't match, then again, that'll kick it back to you and it'll say, can we change this on the system? You've said your name is Sam, but it's really whatever. So we need to change that. So yes, that's a good point. And that steps way back at the start. So it's probably just making sure you do it right at the start, that you put your name in correctly.
Yeah. Okay. Good point there. So when you've done these 4 steps, you've done the investor test, investor type, personal details, had your identity verified, you then will receive an email that tells you you're now investor ready. That means you can invest on the platform into a deal if you so wish. But before you receive this email saying you're investor ready, you can't actually complete an investment on the platform. So I can go and obviously look at the different opportunities. And again, this is where the new FCA rules come in. If you register, you then cannot go and invest for a delay of 24 hours. So you'll see a countdown. The snip was taken where this person had 22 hours left. So it'll count down the time, but you cannot invest within the first 24 hours, which is like a cooling off period, a bump on the road, if you will. And then again, only at that point, then you're going to be able to proceed once you've crossed the 24-hour period. And again, you're prompted to go back to the risk warning and just have a look at the process. So once you then cross the 24 hours, you'll get this message on the left, which will say you can now invest. So again, they're sort of really clarifying that your time has now elapsed and you're making a conscious effort to proceed in the investment process. And then when you go on to an individual project, before you can actually make the investment, you'll have this personalized risk warning, this is new, just insisted on by the FCA. And it's personalized because it actually says, David Johnson, this is a high risk investment. How would you feel if you lost the money you're about to invest? I mean, I don't think, John, there's any more slap in the face to wake people up to the nature of this than this. So if someone does click to proceed, obviously, John, they're making a conscious decision.
Well, what's interesting is I've been involved, as you know, with a couple recent raises, and I've been hearing from friends on Facebook that they really appreciate seeing the full-blown risk warnings and other things on the posts and social media, that it's like, wow, this is really cool that, it says these things and that it's sort of really in your face and like, this is dangerous stuff, folks. So careful what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, from our point of view, it raises the bar higher, and that's really, really what we like. So anything else, Brenda, you want to comment on as the sort of compliance person?
Differentiates possibly from those people who aren't following a regulated path in some ways, if I can use that term, because you will very quickly notice that where our posts and our issuers' posts have these risk warnings, a lot of other people don't. So maybe it'll make you stop and think, well, are they going down the right path? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's
a very good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So okay. There's a question that came in. Can you invest through a SaaS trust?
Okay, so currently not on LEOcrowdfunding. Our FCA principle does not have that as one of the options. In theory, in an equity property crowdfunding platform, the answer is yes, into very specific types of structures. You're into the genuinely diverse commercial vehicle, John, if my memory serves me right. But that's probably a topic for another day. So currently not on LEOcrowdfunding, but in theory it is possible. So we're down just the last minute or two. Do you want to comment on that, or have you anything else for your Corey's Corner?
Well, there is another question. Do you expect all these risk warnings cause fewer people to sign up, or have you seen that so far?
I certainly haven't, Brenda.
No, not from a sign-up point of view. It just means people are better informed when they are signing up, and they're more aware of the risks. The risks have always been there. It's just they're now maybe more aware of them.
Yeah, anecdotal on my side, and this is not backed up by extensive data. I think people who come to crowdfunding platforms are already predisposed to being aware that there are risks, that there are warnings, that there's process. That's partially why they come to a platform, is they want to be on that safer side when it comes to, there's a standardized process. The actual project risk is the same, but they know the paperwork, the process, the distribution of information will be managed in an orderly fashion.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So Corey's Corner, have you any words of wisdom you want to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, there's this cooling off in the London market. There's a number of cities in the US that have seen cooling off. And as I said to someone last month, we had a number of cities in the US where the prices went up by 40%, 40 last year. You know, this whole COVID wave thing. And it's sort of like when the big tidal wave comes in and the water flows up the hill, well, then it flows back down the hill. So water will find its natural level. I don't think people should be overly concerned about today's prices. Unless you're a developer, you're selling a lot of property, you may be looking for a refinance or whatever. But as a long-term landlord, we're here for the cash flow. We're here for the long-term appreciation. We want happy tenants. We want stable situations. So by taking the long view, these blips really don't matter much. And landlords tend to do well when prices wobble.
Okay, thank you. Really good, good words of wisdom there. Thanks very much. So just wrapping up, our next one is, I think, Brenda, you're going to be volunteered to host this one in a month's time. John and I can sort of listen in as panelists. Are you taking a holiday that day, are you? Because it's International Women's Week.
Yeah.
Very good. So we're going to really focus on women in property. We did this last year, and it was one of our most viewed recordings on YouTube. So Thursday, the 16th of March, we're going to have some investors, some fundraisers, of course, those staff members who are women are going to be on discussing the whole world of property, their involvement, their journeys, and it promises to be a really good focus on the broadcast in a month's time. So, of course, you can follow us on social media, particularly YouTube. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to see all the different recordings we've done in the past. I think about 150 bits of content now there. So lots of comments from John on his Ask John series. We sort of 5-minute snippets on a range of questions he was asked. You can dig those out, as well as different project webinars. And there is our contact information. So general questions go to support@leocrowdfunding.com. If you have a question specific to the investment process, or you're an investor and you want to clarify something, you can reach out to investors@LEOcrowdfunding. And again, along the bottom, we've obviously been highlighting this anyway today, but again, go and have a look at the risk section, risk warnings, and read those, and just make sure you're comfortable with those. So that takes us to the end of today. We're about to jump on another project webinar in a few minutes, but anything, John, to finish off, or happy enough?
No, all good. All questions are answered. And if people do have more questions, see us in the next broadcast.
Fantastic. And as usual, recording will be up in a few hours' time. Brenda, thank you for joining us. And
no problem.
I'll see you in a few minutes on a project webinar. All right. Fine. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your company. Bye. Take care. Bye-bye.